All right, it's time, and I want to make sure that we get started and get through everything, and everybody's here, so let's do that. Welcome, everyone, to our first of our weekly sessions on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Really excited to get this up and running. And so I'm just going to do a short, as you see on the agenda, a short introduction to this session, but more about how these are going to run over the next few months. So the framework that you see for today, where we have an introduction, and then we'll have a facilitated discussion on a particular topic. So today's is media outreach. So we'll spend 20 to 30 minutes on that topic. And then we'll also have discussion taking that topic and moving into toolkit feedback and experiences that you're having and things like that. But they'll all flow into whatever the topic is that we're working on. And then during this whole hour, we'll have lots of time for you to have questions and answers and talk amongst yourselves. And also we'll make sure at the very end of each session that we have time for questions, answers, what's coming up, all that kind of thing. So that's the flow. And I did also want to say that this is the flow we have right now that we think we're going to use every time. You know, this is all a learning process. All of us are going to be doing that over the next few months. So if we end up deciding that we need to change the format, the way it all works, we may do that, but we will let you know. So that's pretty much all I wanted to do for the welcome. I don't want to take too much time, so I'm going to introduce Marika, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what's happening today, and then she will introduce Shonda, who's going to be talking about media outreach. Marika, you are on. I'm going to unmute you. I just did. Okay, go. You're good.
That's it. Okay. Anyway, I'll skip what I said. So it's great that there's this many people here. I'm so glad that as many of you could join as are here on the screen and signing off on your names. So we are going to spend a lot of time kind of throughout this discussion trying to answer your questions. I do want to say that we're going to have broad, ready to code project questions at the end. So if you have something that is been burning in your minds or whatever, please save that to the end. But during the presentation with Shonda, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, then we're encouraging discussion, and you can do discussion in the chat. And Shonda, I think, is going to be asking questions kind of as she goes, and so feel free to respond and ask questions as we go along. Okay. And our topic today, which you can see from the agenda, is around connecting with media and other decision makers or influencers that you might want to share your project and tell your story to. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and start. So we have most of the time with Shonda. There we go. And I'll just scoot up here.
First, I just want to say congratulations to all of you. There is such a pool of so many fine libraries and applicants for this program, and it's really an honor to meet you all, and congratulations from myself, but also from the Washington office of ALA. I extend those congratulations. And I come at media relations from a couple of different perspectives. One is that I think libraries are great and I want the world to know about it, just like all of us. But also, one of the audiences that we keep in mind in the Washington office is our decision makers. And so you are the face of the kind of message that decision makers need to hear, and that all members of Congress can rally around, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. They all care about technology, and you are doing something in your libraries that people really care about on Capitol Hill. So again, congratulations to you and thank you. It's also nice to be part of this very first phone call. And as Marika mentioned, this is really going to be more like a discussion. I've never been on a call this large and tried to facilitate a discussion, but this is our first time, so we'll just try to pull together and cooperate. And I thought I would start our discussion with some questions posed on the discussion board just this afternoon. And one of them is, I've noticed some really nice coverage actually over the past few weeks. Those of you, I know, I think Homer, Alaska, and Georgetown County Public Library, several of you have had news articles or something in your public radio station about your programs. Just want to say that's a great job. And have any of you yourselves actually done any outreach to local media about your program? Or ever, actually, related to your library?
So do you want everybody to put that in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead and put it in the chat. And while we're waiting for people to put it in the chat, can I put someone on the spot? Claudia Haynes.
Yes, I posted about public radio, our local public radio station did a news story about receiving this grant. And what's actually great is they aired a story. They came to the first event in our initiative. And then during Media Literacy Week, they had myself and the library director on as an introduction to the recording of a media literacy panel. And they aired the story again and did a really nice job of making the connections between the Ready to Code project and what we're doing here at the Homer Library and media literacy. And they're hugely supportive. So that was a really good fit for us. And lots of people have mentioned in town or at the library that they heard the story and really have responded to it.
Okay, nice. I thank you so much, Claudia, for letting me put you on the spot there. I'm looking at the group chat and seeing that a number of you have pitched stories to your local media to varying degrees. And I guess maybe, yeah, Pittsburgh, we've done a lot there. Nice work. I'm looking at some of these. Let's see, Jerry K. Hopkins, what library are you with?
Independence.
Okay, great. I remember reading about your story, Jay. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot, I'm wondering, you say you've done some outreach to your local paper, and I'm wondering, when did you first make that contact with the reporter?
For this project?
Or for any outreach that you've done, any media outreach?
I think that for this project, it just went into the paper this past week.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how did that come about? Did you just send it to the newsroom, or do you have a specific contact? A specific reporter?
There's a specific contact. I think the person in charge talked with her a few times, and then they wrote up a press release and put it in the paper.
Okay. All right. I'm wondering if anyone else could tell me, let's see.
Oh, there's one from McCracken County that had recognition from their congressperson.
That's nice. That's nice. Great. Okay. I'll come back to this from Susan about the McCracken County congressman in your county. So I'm just wondering, is there someone else that would, besides Claudia or Jerry, that could mention how they have reached out to a local reporter the very first time?
This is Susan at McCracken County. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Oh, great. So we don't have a publicity department per se, but we do have a contacts list of about 30 to 35 local media. And we just sent it out to all of them. And we had a good rate of success in getting it picked up. We had it on the website of our local public radio station. We've had it on the website of about 2 TV stations. And then last week, we have an NBC affiliate here in our town. We're a pretty small market for our own affiliate, but we have one. And the science reporter came out and did an on-camera interview with me last week about the program. And they're putting it together as a package. They also wanted to get B-roll of some of the outreach sites where we're going to have our programs. So it hasn't aired yet, but I'm told it should be airing in the next few days.
Wow, that's terrific. I have a few.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of really good action on the group chat, and it's hard to follow both, but I just would like to follow up with you about your outreach. You said you had a contacts list, and so I'm wondering, where did you get those contacts?
Well, you know, to be quite honest, I've been in this position for less than a year, and that list had already existed when I got here. So just our staff, you know, along the way, they just gathered that information. And a lot of that is just being active in different community groups and, you know, meeting, you know, most of us are in groups like the Rotary or Kiwanis or Lions, and representatives from the various newspapers and radio stations and TV stations are members. So we get contact information that way.
Okay. All right. That's really helpful that you have this institutional history of contacts that way. Just to speed things up a little bit so we don't have time, I don't mean to talk at you, but so if you want to be more interactive, please just jump in. I just wanted to point out, especially for those of you who don't have communications directors or PR staff that are dedicated to this, when you do media outreach, it always starts with an initial contact. And you need to know, as a few people mentioned, who covers the issue that you're interested in. So education, in this case, technology for a local newspaper. And it always starts with an email. Almost, in fact, every single journalist I've ever worked with prefers to be contacted by email initially. And so that's kind of a nicer way for an easier, more convenient way for us to introduce ourselves. But I just wanted to hit home that there's always an initial outreach effort. And so if you ever want assistance with that, please feel free to contact me. And even more than that is that you want to start building a relationship with a local reporter before you need to ask them for something. So that is always most effective, so that you don't sound like you're asking them to give me, but to establish a relationship and see them as part of your library mission, really, and as a resource for them. You're all, as librarians, really, really trusted as public sources. And I don't want you to underestimate the reputation that you have within your community, and for you to build upon that. So feel really confident when you approach a journalist in whether it's radio, TV, or written communication, or even a blog. We've had some really nice outreach to blogs as well. So instead of getting into the details on that, I have another question for you all, and I'll just kind of look at the group chat. What do you think makes a good story? Obviously, we won a $25,000 grant. That's a good story. Does anyone else want to add in?
Impact.
Impact, great.
Yeah. connection to the community. That's a really great one for something I think we're going to hit on.
Exactly.
Personal stories. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so this is great. In all of the persuasive communicating I've done, I almost always, and other organizations that I've worked with, start with a personal story. And sometimes the best spokesperson you have for your program is not the library director, is not the PR person, but it's actually a kid in your program. I think a great example of this is in the library's Ready to Code video that we had about a year ago. And some of the comments from the kids who are in those programs are the most impactful. So to have a human face on digital literacy or the 21st century workforce, to have that is priceless, and that is what's really compelling. Like the hero's journey, that's a really good one. All of these are terrific. One of the things I'd like to say is that timeliness is really important as well. Obviously, within a week or so of the grantee announcements, there were a lot of stories that were coming out. And so that timely angle is really helpful. And the further away we get from that, the less and less that's a story. Can anyone think of a really good timely angle that's coming up? Say in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, Hour of Code. That's the
okay, excellent. Exactly. CS Education Week. So if you go into Google and you look at all of the news coverage on CS Education Week for 2016, you'll see quite a lot of it. And it could be that your local newspaper or NPR affiliate has a story on CS Education Week. And so maybe one of your goals would be to get your program in that story. And that's December 4th through 10th, as you know. And so now is a really good time to start reaching out to a reporter related to that and just let them know who you are. It's 3 weeks or 2 weeks out. And so if you start and introduce yourself now, when it gets closer to December 4th, you will be on their list to call. So, and another thing I'd like to mention, you talk about community impact, and one of the ways that you can get into a story as well is if you hook it to some current news that might be on a different topic. So, for example, if there's something about diversity, if you see an article in the newspaper, here's something on the radio or on TV about diversity, you might be able to contact that reporter and fit your story into that. If your program has a specific outreach objective towards, you know, young people of color or low income and that kind of thing. Another one that you mentioned was family engagement. And so when you talk to a reporter, you wouldn't probably use the word family engagement, but you would describe what you mean by that, which is providing services to your community that you know that they need. And so that's another thing about a good story. And how are we doing on time?
Finishing up. 1 more minute.
Okay, 1 more minute. Good. So a few other things. I just wanted to point out to you is always ask for their deadlines when they call you back, and make sure that you respond right away. Those seem to be givens, but it's really important to respond in any relationship. I know we only have 1 minute left, but I guess what I'd like to emphasize most of all to everyone is that media relations is about relationships. And that's how I frame all the work that I do with ALA members and with all of the reporters inside the Beltway that I work with and outside, is that it's all about a relationship, and you're librarians and you know how to do that. And so trust your instincts when it comes to building relationships with people who need your story. And with that, I'll also say, feel free to contact me if you ever want assistance or advice, and we'll have some actions that we're going to put up on the discussion board also to follow up as well.
You know, I made a mistake on the time. Do people have questions for Shonda? She's gonna leave after we're finished here. And does anybody have any questions or further comments? I will emphasize that she did make the offer, especially for people who don't have their own PR communications team. If you want some guidance or help locally, that she's here on our side to be able to do that.
Hi, this is Claudia. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Would you mind giving just an example of what you mean when you talk about some actions that are going up? Because for me, that might guide me on what I might ask you for outside of what you're going to post about.
Okay. Well, I didn't have, for example, do your homework and find someone who covered CS Education Week last year and follow up with them. That is one specific action that you can take. Another action would be ALA has some excellent resources for media outreach, and they're on the Libraries Transform page. I'll send you the link to that. And you do have to sign up to access those resources. It's pretty easy, but I'll send you the link to that. And although the Libraries Transform talking points won't apply really so much to you, you have the ready to code points and but the advice on how to reach out to a reporter. There's also information about writing an op-ed and eventually even approaching the editorial board, perhaps, of your newspaper, which is also very effective. All these resources are in the Libraries Transform toolkit. So that's one thing you could do, is read that and apply one of those things. Another action, Claudia, would be perhaps you don't feel ready to reach out to a reporter quite yet, but maybe you can suggest resources that would help you, and maybe in turn resources that would be good for the toolkit in April as well.
They asked a question about your contact information.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll post that along with the actions.
Sure. So Kristen asked about giving out Shonda's contact information. So I think we said in the beginning, when we post the recording for this webinar, we'll post also some of these action items and the links, and I'll share Shonda's contact information if you want to share with your communications person, or if you want to follow up if you don't have a communications person.
Yeah. I do have one more thing that I'll say in closing if there aren't any other questions. And I sound like a typical Washington person when I say that. You are making such a difference in your communities, and it's really important to get the word out and to have people join your programs, to have people support your programs. But also from a Washington office perspective, I just want to say that talking with a reporter today from Politico is really good for ALA. But what's better is to have someone in their local community who has a story to share that their member of Congress hears, because those are the people who make decisions that affect your congressional district, affect your library, but also together the entire nation. So together, your voice in many ways is much more important and much more effective than anything that I can do here on Capitol Hill. So thank you for, being the advocates that you are.
Yep, you're here.
All right, good.
So Shonda is like I said, going to be available. I'll share her contact information. Oh, Stacy, that's a good question. So Stacy's asking about sharing personal stories. So we were starting to collect that on that Google Sheet. I'm going to make a note, and we can figure out a good way to upload actual stories and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'll get back on that one.
Yeah, and if you do generate media, we have a category on the site to add like your media hits, we call them. So.
Okay, great. And if you do have more, we can continue this conversation on the community of practice on the Google site. And we have questions. If you think of something, put them in the chat, and the chat will go along, I'm sorry, with the recording. So there'll be an archive of the chat too. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to scoot back over. And I think on our agenda next is about recruitment. And this is really, thank you. This is really, we were noticing on the community of practice, there were a couple of questions about how you recruit youth for your programs. And I know libraries have all variety of ways. So I'm hoping that we can just have a discussion, and that if you want to talk about what you're doing, or if you were one of the people who posted the question and want to ask a follow-up question, this is really your time to get into how you're getting the word out about these programs in particular. So what I thought I would do for facilitating was to read the chat and kind of comment on what's going on in the chat. I do have some prompting questions if we need that, but I was hoping whoever, is thinking about that, if you're getting ready to do your program, to just kind of jump in and unmute yourself. I think you all have control over that now. Unmute yourself and jump in. And we're going to spend about 15 minutes or so on this before we move on to the toolkit. Anybody want to get started thinking about your programs?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, this is Sarah, and I'm with the Belgrade Community Library in Montana. We are doing a coding club called Game On Coding Club, and we're targeting low-income families or potentially at-risk families where kids might not graduate high school normally. And we started out by reaching out to the United Way program here, where they have an after-school program in which they provide scholarships for some kids to attend that are not able to pay for the full price. So we reached out to them, and then they actually helped us coordinate with the vice principal of some of the middle schools. So then the vice principal, went and kind of talked to some kids he thought might be interested because they couldn't share that personal level of information with us. And we got a few kids from that method, but other than that, we actually have just been catching families as they come through the door and catching the teens as they're at the computer that are here most every day, because we figure if they're here every day, they wouldn't mind participating in something like this, so that it's a little more value added than just playing Roblox for 3 hours a day. But that's kind of where we're at. We actually have we limited our first coding club to 15 participants, and it's going to be a 4-week program, and we have 13 signed up so far, so we're pretty pleased with that, and it starts next week.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
Next week. Anybody else want to? Oh, okay. So Danielle shared a survey. And have you used surveys in the past and found that successful?
I think it might be a little bit different since I'm in an elementary school. We're K-8. We are Google schools, so everything we do is through Google Forms or some way, shape, or form. So actually, my principal and superintendent today hosted an assembly for me to introduce the entire program. 2 hours.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, it was great. So I took about 20 minutes to talk to the entire 6th to 8th grade classes. And then tomorrow I'm going to teach or talk to 4th and 5th grade. And I made a little slideshow for them to view. And then after the slideshow, the students went back upstairs to their classrooms and took the survey. So far, I've had about 30 or so kids complete the survey, and about 75% last time I checked are interested in joining the club. So
wow,
great turnout.
And do you have an idea on what, I mean, 75 sounds like a ton to me, but what the drop off from that is from previous experience? I'm just kind of curious.
What I told the students today is that when I saw that the turnout was so high, or interest level was so high, that I would probably have to open it up to more than one after school program. Whereas originally I was thinking it would be maybe one Wednesday a month. And now the kids are coming up to me saying, can we do it before school? So I think we're going to do a before school program and then an after school program to accommodate all the students that are interested.
That's great.
Reach over the 40 students that I had originally thought about.
Yeah. So some of the things in the chat, and I know I said I wouldn't talk very much, but it's making me think, and something we're going to add to the community of practice is a place for you to upload your resources. So, somebody is doing t-shirts. And so, you could snap a picture of your design and upload that to the folder. It's not there yet, but we'll have that in place, if not when the recording goes live shortly thereafter. And it makes me think, Danielle, if there's a way to share the questions in your survey, that might be interesting to people. So anyone else want to jump in?
Hey, I'll jump in. This is Alex. I'm turning on video too. I'm from Meridian Library. Can you guys all hear me? Okay.
Yep.
So our program is called Mighty Girl Coders, and it's building off of a few other Mighty Girl programs that we've done. So we reached out specifically to those people and those attendees to see if they wanted to show up. And we've capped our registration for each group. We're doing 3 different age groups at 20. And then we also reached out to the Girl Scouts and the Boys and Girls Club. And then we also have a youth advisory council, and we reached out to them as well, and then just posted on Facebook. And we exceeded our registration. We're in the youngest group right now. So I imagine that once we get into the teenagers, our drop-off rate and our attendance is going to be a little bit harder to get. So we'll have to rethink our strategy then.
Mm-hmm. Do people in general have strategies that are different for different age groups? I know, Claudia, I think you're focusing on early years. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I think I saw a conversation about that versus the teens. And then people have talked about how you keep the teens coming so that they don't go to the first 3 and then stop. Do people have ideas about that from previous experiences or things you're trying? Or anything else that might,
This is Claudia. My grant program actually spans preschool up through high school and then full families. So I am experimenting with all sorts of strategies, definitely based on age. My preschool programs, introducing computational thinking for preschoolers is actually happening. I'm embedding that in the story times that we already have, as well as offering some family programs that are basically for kids 4 and up. So, I have a very regular attendance at those, but those families are very comfortable with me introducing new things because we do stories and then have art and science activities afterwards. So kind of putting in computational games or talking about that is a natural fit. November 2nd, we started our after school coding program, and that's for 11 to 14-year-olds. And because that started, you know, literally a moment after the grant project was announced, we didn't have the normal lead time. So we've had kind of a smaller group, but each week it meets weekly. We've had one more kid join. And the original kids are still coming. And so they're very interested in the idea of this being an experiment that they can help shape. And they're comfortable hanging out with other kids that are into learning how to code. So that's been a win-win. And I think some of that has been word of mouth. So we're just trying different things beyond social media and flyers around town and talking to teachers. That's just kind of a little view of ours.
Great.
I can add to that if you guys can hear me.
Yes.
You can? Okay. My name is Mandy Carrico. I'm from the Harris County Public Library. And as far as the drop-off kind of scare about them not sticking through it, we're doing like a robotics film kind of thing where the lessons are scaffolded, and as they work, they're progressing towards creating this video short. And we're doing a celebration where we view everyone's videos. And so we're hoping that kind of end goal and seeing as they get through each stage, hopefully they'll be excited about the next one and seeing the project to completion, to control coming to a couple and then leaving. And then also for advertisement, we're doing the regular social media advertisement, blog posts, Facebooks in-house, but we also have an agreement with Nextdoor, which is an app that posts to neighborhoods about things going on in the community. And that is something that if we don't have the numbers when we get closer to program time, we can do a blast on Nextdoor. The agreement that we have in this area is Nextdoor allows the police department and the library to be the only organizations that can post. Otherwise, they have to be members of the community. But it really does fill up programs because it reaches an area of about 10,000 per blast, depending on where you are.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if other communities or if other people have something like that. That's interesting to know.
I would encourage, we had to actually contact the app and ask for this. And we sent in zip codes and set up these blasts around the libraries so that we could post. So I would encourage contacting them because there's already a precedence for it. They might do it in other communities too.
Right. That's great. I hate to rush us through, but I want to make sure that we have time for questions, general questions, and then to spend a chunk of time on the toolkit, because that's all ready to go for the first part.
I have a general question for the group, Marika. This is Nikki.
Yeah.
If people just want to chime in on the chat and let me know if they're interested in having that same agreement with Nextdoor, then that's something that I could potentially contact Nextdoor and give them a list of the library names to get that agreement going. So just chime in on the chat and I'll take note if there's enough interest.
There's going to be a long list. Yeah, and maybe we can post that on the community of practice too for people who weren't able to make it today. Okay, well, if people come up with more things, we can add that to the end. So Nikki's going to spend some time now talking about the toolkit and what the process will look like. It's a little different today because today's the first day of all of this. So moving forward. So Nikki, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so as we've discussed, this is a continuous learning process for us as well. So based on some of your feedback and initial thoughts, what we're proposing that we do in order to get this constant feedback on the toolkit or constant feedback in order to build the toolkit, that we will be sending out a Google form, a survey, every week before the community of practice call. And there's going to be standard questions each week that you can put information in. And I've put these questions in the agenda here, but I wanted to go through them today just in case there's any questions so that you understand the purpose of these questions, and I'll just answer any of your questions. But
First we'll just ask you to identify which library you're from. And this is a very, this is informal. This isn't a formal report that you're sending us, anything like that. We just want to be able to have a mechanism of getting your quick thoughts every week. We'll ask you to describe the Ready to Code related activities that you took the previous week. So that could be planning. And you might talk a little bit about if you've involved any youth in that planning, or talked to any parents, or sent out surveys, things like that. Or maybe you started actually running a program. Just a quick summary of what you did in the previous week. You can talk about any challenges that came up. If you happen to solve them, great. If there's still challenges, that's helpful for us to know as well. If you had any successes, again, related to the Ready to Code activities. And then we have one question: did you contribute feedback to the toolkit resources sheet? And that eventually there will be a URL, the actual link to the how to give that feedback. We're still deciding the best way to do that, but the link will be in there. The purpose of this question, it's a yes or no question, but it's just to prompt you to remember to do that. So I don't want to be sending out 5 different things for every due every week. So we're just going to collect that here. And the purpose of that is for you to add the resources you're using. If you've tested one of the resources in the previous week, you can put your feedback there, things like that. It might be that you've already used one of those resources in the past and decided it's not helpful, and we want to know that before we ask other people to try and use it. And so that will, how we collect that feedback will become clear soon. And we'll put that link in there. And then just capturing the number of youth that participated in your activity in the past week. And this is an estimate. Like I said, it could be 2, and you included a couple youth in the design of your upcoming program, or it could be 10 showed up for a drop-in session, or it could be you had the 75 sign up and have started to participate in your weekly club, for example. And then there'll be just a standard question at the end: is there anything else you want to tell us that perhaps we didn't ask specifically enough? So I'll pause there in case there are any questions or concerns. And again, the purpose of the survey is just to capture that quick feedback. And then really, I think this weekly survey, that's going to be a very helpful component that then we will organize that information, and we'll be letting you know what we're hearing along the way. We can adjust our community practice topics if needed. We can address any major questions each week, but also for that first big deliverable that I have back to you all in around the midwinter conference in February, where we'll be making some suggestions on how to organize all this information into a comprehensive toolkit. This is where a lot of that information is going to be coming. So it's going to be really important to get your quick thoughts each week on that.
Nikki, so, Juan is asking how you're going to give out the survey.
Linda or Marika will send. We're trying to keep it limited to the number of point of contacts that you're hearing from us. So Linda, do you want to answer that?
I think that we'll send it out, and we can add a link in that new file vault we have coming. We can add a link so they'll be available both via email and then if you're on the community of practice. Right, Marika? So agreed?
Yes, that's right. I think our goal is to have the agenda, if not a full day ahead, right. Approximately a full day ahead, and the survey will go there. So, and as Nikki said, it's intended to be pretty quick. So it's kind of a checklist. Oh, good question, Claudia. I think yes, if you're able to do that. If you've already been doing things, I think that that's certainly useful. Mm-hmm. Any questions about because our next, we're kind of going from toolkit into general questions. So if you have questions about the toolkit, beyond just this survey, I think it's okay to throw those out there now too.
I actually have a question for everybody, if that's okay, related to this. And that's actually, since we don't have a survey for this one, I was wondering if people had challenges or successes or anything they wanted to talk about what you've done, Claudia, since November, whatever that date was, or if you have, you know, anything you wanted to mention or ask about related to the activities you've already been involved in.
I can say something.
Go ahead, Juan.
So one of the outcomes that I have in the program is to actually prepare librarians to facilitate these workshops, so that we're thinking about scaling them, and not just me doing it, but having librarians being able to do it themselves. So I've been working on planning the training that they will receive and getting them on board on that. And there have been some challenges in terms of scheduling, I think. Because we're like 27 branches, and it's difficult to schedule the librarians to come at once. But successes is the fact that they're really excited about doing them, and then they understand the concept, right? So I have been doing one-on-one visits to have them understand what is it that we're doing. So that's just in general. I wanted to just point out that kind of step in the process that I'm in.
Yeah, that's great.
This is Claudia. I wanted to chime in. Part of our after school weekly program, 3 of the 7 sessions, like this first bunch anyway, we are Skyping with some sort of person in the field that related to computer science. So some app developers, and then a geophysicist who uses computer science. And the idea is that the 3 different, or really 4 different people have some connection to Alaska to demonstrate how Alaskans can be involved with computer science and tech. And we did the first one last week. And we Skyped with Lauren Farley, who is the co-founder and CEO of the DOTE app. And she was excellent. And I could not have orchestrated a better conversation between kids. And so we talked for about a half hour, and she used so much of the same vocabulary that we've been talking about in the coding program. They asked questions like, how much do you make? And she introduced them to the idea of venture capital and startups, what it means to work for a startup. She talked to them about she grew up in Alaska, and so what her experience has been like going to college, what we call outside, and living and working in San Francisco. She talked about the different kinds of engineers that are on her staff and what all the employees do. And it was a really great conversation, and the kids just took to it. It was, as I said, I couldn't have orchestrated it better. And so even if you don't have a lot of tech people in your community, finding ways to kind of bring that personal in for kids and kind of give them a little nugget to think about I strongly encourage you.
Claudia, can you remind us what age group that was for? Was that high school?
It's 11 to 14, so 6th to 8th grade. There's a 9th grader in there too.
Very cool.
And Claudia, how did you find those or identify those people, right?
So 2 of the people that we're going to talk to in a couple weeks, they actually designed a app that's a keyboard texting app that allows people to text in the 21 Alaska Native languages. Our state has 22 official languages and 21 are Alaska Native. And so they're involved with language development and revitalization. And so if you can't text in your home language, it's hard to keep it growing. So those people were kind of natural fit. The geophysicist is actually the sister of one of my coworkers. And then Lauren, I stalked her on the internet. There was a story about her in Teen Vogue, and they mentioned the Anchorage connection. And I reached out to her on LinkedIn, and she so graciously responded within a couple hours and just was really enthusiastic. So a little bit of just internet stalking and reaching out to people.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. And Stacy posted, I remember now that you said these in-house coders, somewhere you posted about that, maybe in your introduction. So how are you connecting with those? I'm trying to look for your name. How are you connecting with them?
We have contacted local chambers, and my husband does tech stuff, so he knew some people because he was always looking at what people are doing in tech in our area. And our economic development office, all of these places were very helpful. Oh, and EggStar, which is a bank specifically for farmers. And then we had someone on staff whose brother worked at John Deere, who works with a guy that's who's coding for the driverless tractors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so cool. I'm reading the chat too. That's great.
Yeah, I really like, let's see, Susan's comment about, let's see, it says one of their part-time employees is also a computer programmer at a local company, and it's a bank. And so I think a lot of kids don't necessarily think about computer science in terms of the local businesses or integrate into non-tech companies, which is just such an important part of giving them access to these resources and realizing they don't necessarily have to leave their hometowns and go work at Google in Mountain View in order to, pursue computer science. So I really love that example.
Mm-hmm. I see a question about Wi-Fi that I'm going to hold until the end, but it's not because it's not important. It's something I think about all the time, especially in Arkansas, for what it's worth. But any other things related to this idea of bringing experts in or connecting with the community? I know that's one of the things we asked you all to consider as part of your programs, how to bring in the community. Or Linda?
And I'm just going to say that probably in December, early January, we're going to have Rika Rose, and I think one of the things she's going to be talking about is engaging with community. So that will be a specific topic coming up.
Mm-hmm. Local Extension Office, Boys and Girls Club. Oh, it's a Wi-Fi question of the Boys and Girls Club.
Actually, that wasn't Rika Rose, that's Rachel McGee. I'm getting my speakers mixed up. Rachel McGee will be talking about connecting with community.
The R. So Nikki, here's a question for you from Stacy. Google employees interested in doing Google Hangouts?
I'm always happy to try. And sometimes we'll get, 10 people volunteer, and other times a year we won't get anyone, but I'm always happy to try. Maybe there's a way we can add that into that resources list of things we're looking for. And then we can put out, I think the more geographies we cover, then the more consistent message, and hopefully we get more people raise their hands for it. So yeah, let's put that on the list to do.
Great, great. So I'm going to go ahead, and I see two things now related to Wi-Fi. And so this is something that we just in general talk about a lot, about devices and internet access. And I know in some communities it's a huge challenge. And I know libraries are doing the hotspots and, you know, organizing taking their things into devices and programs into other settings and using hotspots with that. But I'm wondering if other people just want to talk about the internet access and what you're doing around it, especially, I don't know, the one-to-one schools or the Google schools, how your Wi-Fi is, and other experiences. Sounds like backup hotspots is the thing. Separate Wi-Fi line. Is it, I guess I can ask just a general question and you can chat it because there may not be discussion, but maybe just put your library in if you have Wi-Fi issues, might be a way to get a sense of this. So you could put Wi-Fi issue in if you have a workaround in the chat. So while people are doing that, are there general questions about the project or the community of practice or any other general questions in our last couple minutes together? Wow, Susan, I need you on my team. Susan is already thinking about the final report. What kind of data? So that might be a combination question, but Linda or Nikki, do you want to go first?
Well, I think the most common one.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Nikki.
The most common one I see that folks need to prepare for is just tracking the number of kids that participate in your programs, because that's something you can't think about and go back and get. So we will be asking that every week. So you will be making those estimates, but that's the one I see most commonly people get tripped up on. And I realize that we should get to a format together soon, but we won't be expecting you to, we won't be requiring anything in hindsight that you should have been doing if we haven't told you about it.
I think one way to think about it, because before there's a template or a form or questions and things, is to think about the questions that we're asking both in the application and compare how your program measured against what you put in your application in the beginning is one way to look at it. So if you said you were going to connect with a diverse population, how did that go? Were there things that were successful, things you should have done differently? Those kinds of things I think will be really valuable. Another thing I think will be valuable is feedback on, well, I guess that's related, but all the ready to code concepts about facilitated learning and connected learning and those kinds of things I think will be valuable. But you'll be thinking about that as you go. So I think just look at what you proposed versus how you're experiencing your proposal is one way to think about it.
Right, and Caitlin just posted something similar to that, so you two were of the same wavelength, but she's also saying reflect on how you met the goals you set out for the program you are doing. So I think that, and key themes. So I think that's really going to be important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we're right about at time. I wanted to remind people about the form for travel support for midwinter. Mm-hmm. And Linda, I think you're going to put the link to that. There it is in the chat. And I'm sorry, Linda, what was the deadline that we were asking people to do it by?
December 1st.
December 1st. So if you can check that out if you need travel support. We are asking that you have your supervisor or whoever the appropriate person is to write a little letter saying that you do need the travel support to make it to Midwinter. Linda, go ahead.
Or have Marika write you a letter saying you should be there.
Right. So we can do that if you need a rationale to go. Okay, I think we did it. Anybody from any last minute things, anything from the Ready to Code team before we go? So again, this recording will be posted on the Community of Practice in the webinar tab, and it just takes a little while to render it, and Linda is going to edit out, I'm not sure what, nothing, edit out bloopers, I guess. And then we'll post the follow-ups from Shonda, and then we'll just look forward to more discussion on the Community of Practice. There is another session tomorrow. No, next week. Sorry, my fault. They're every other week. There's another session next week, post-Thanksgiving. So we hope that people will be able to make that one as well. And okay, all right then. Thank you, everybody. It's great. See you. Happy Thanksgiving.